Welcome back, folks. Coming to you live from the Amateur Radio News Desk. My correspondent in training, Smoking Ape, to
Hello.
my side over here, and we're going to talk about DMR. And he's going to give us all the information that he has accumulated for his knowledge transfer test, and we're going to verify that it's correct.
Well, thanks for having me into the newsroom, T.O. It's really a nice place. I like what you've done with it. It's coming along really good.
Fresh paint on the walls behind me. I've got this nice desk
great.
here. I mean, this is some top notch.
Yeah, the finish. Yeah, the finish on this thing's amazing.
Yeah, I had that glass inset done in the front there.
That looks good.
It's pretty cool. All joking aside, this is just a little gimmick that I put up to kind of make the video a little more fun for us. And you guys know who Smoking Ape is. Smoking Ape, tell us about your channel. What do you do on your channel?
I do mostly ham radio stuff. There's some older videos that do some other things, but really just more playing around with ham radio, learning, growing, making videos, and then hoping to bring other folks along for the ride.
Excellent.
Nothing too serious.
That's kind of what we do on this channel too. And longtime viewers know, but if you haven't and you're a new viewer, there's a couple of buttons down below. And as Ape says, go ahead and click them. It'll make you happy.
It sure will.
I stole that for another video too.
It's not copyrighted, so it's okay. Yeah. Copyrighted. I'm not sure. I'm sure Jason will correct me on that.
Yeah, he's the grammar guy.
Right.
Yeah, and then in between the two of us, I have a web page pulled up. And I guess the first thing that we need to do is start talking about why we're here, what we're doing today. What we decided to do, and you've already seen the first video in the series, was why do you want to do DMR? And now that we're done with that one and everybody's all on board and ready to go out and buy their first DMR radio, we figured we'd start talking about DMR radios. And one of the resources where you can go find out some more information about it is John Micklor's site. John's got a fantastic site here. Oh, wait, I see a GMRS label down there too. Oh, FRS MERS section. So
he's got all the important information on that website.
Yeah, and so Ape had shared this site with me a couple of months ago when I was looking for what radio to get, and in particular, John's got this feature comparison page for the BTEC DMR 6X2, the Anytone 868 UV, 878 UV, and the Alinco DJ MD5T, and these all appear to be the same radio.
The Alinco is slightly different, but they're all made by Anytone, and most of the internals are the same.
Yeah. And so Micklor's come up with this fantastic table here, and you can see all the different features of the different radios in a side-by-side comparison. When you physically get these radios in your hand, they're going to look exactly the same. And then they're just a little tiny bit different in feature comparison. I got the 6X2, and one of the things the 6X2 has is an extra battery in the box, and you have to buy that separately for some of these other radios.
Well, that's one of the reasons I ended up getting the 6X2. Now, the batteries aren't that expensive; they're like $15, give or take. But it's just handy to have that included in the packaging. Like when I bought mine, I think it was about $40 cheaper than the 868. The 878 wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
And just with the extra battery, $40 cheaper for basically the same radio. They're all made by Anytone. It just seemed to me that was the right choice to make.
Yeah, for sure. And Anytone's getting their money out of it anyway, because BTEC's paying Anytone for it.
Yeah, for sure. Now the firmware is a little bit different in the two radios. Like you can't do a BTEC firmware upgrade on a 878, and you can't directly copy a code plug from one to the other. I've seen where people have, but I still think that there's some conversion that needs to happen there.
You might lose one or two things in translation there.
Yeah, and building a code plug, I mean, it's really not that painful. You should be able to take a look at one and build one for you from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, you can go all out. So what does this thing here say? Let me see if I can find it on the page. The user database, 200,000 contacts. You're not going to fill up 250 zones with 200,000 contacts. I mean, it's very easy to go download the entire database and program everybody into your radio because it'll hold the entire database. But to start out with as a brand new DMR user, put your 4 friends in and the 2 talk groups that you want to talk to, and that's 10 minutes worth of work.
Yeah, and that's a really handy feature is being able to put that whole database on there. So like when you talk about buying a DMR radio, I always would say get one that can hold as many contacts as you want. Now there's something, the DMR contact database is different than your digital contacts, if that makes any sense. Like for example, I might put in my local talk group as my contact in my radio, but it's not part of that ID database. That database is everybody who's got a registered ID.
Right. And in a future video, we'll get into the details of how to get your own registered ID. But for the purposes of this video, we're just talking radios.
Yeah, and the reason I was mentioning that is I have other DMR radios where you can only put like 5,000 contact IDs in there. So when somebody talks to you, you just see their ID. You don't see their name, their location. With the BTEC, you can actually see with their license class, all kinds of information about them, almost if it was a QRZ lookup, which is really handy.
Yeah, and like I always say, these websites, we're just talking about them right now, but there will be links in the description down below to get you these websites. So don't feel like you've got to squint and see this little tiny text that's on the screen that we're kind of just talking about right here.
You can squint if you want.
I mean, yeah, don't hold back. Do whatever you want to do. It's right. You're even free to hit that thumbs up button on the video down below if you'd like. Another website that we have here is by Toshin, KE0FHS. And Abe said he did a lot of research on this website. There was a ton of information here on this website about DMR.
Yeah, you're taking a look at amateur radio notes.
Amateur radio notes, yeah.
Yeah, I was pulling this one up. When I was getting into DMR, this is the website that I went to where I learned tons of different things around setting up a Pi-Star hotspot, configuring Pi-Star, not just connecting it to Brandmeister, but downloading and configuring the Brandmeister API, which allows you the ability to manage static, not just dynamic talk groups. Also, he's got a section on password security, which is becoming mandatory now. If you don't set a password up on your Brandmeister account that you download to your hotspot, people can spoof you and set up a hotspot under your ID.
Yep.
So he's got tons of great information on there, and you can do crossover where you can do DMR to Yaesu or Yaesu to DMR. I really would encourage anybody to check out that site.
Yeah, and so what Abe's talking about with this password thing, if you're like all of a sudden not able to use DMR anymore, that's the reason why, and we'll have videos coming out on that in the future. So these are HTs that we're talking about here, but also you can get into mobile radios or inside your car or whatever else you want to use a mobile radio for. I used a mobile radio for my 2-meter base station for a very long time at the house. Are there any like full-fledged base station type radios for DMR use?
There was a device that was being manufactured for a while that actually had a embedded hotspot in it. And it was the size of, kind of like a base station radio, but it was a DMR hotspot and a radio all in one box. I'm not real sure what happened to those. I haven't seen them around, but it was pretty handy. But being a contained box with a hotspot, I don't think you could configure it to use like on your local DMR repeaters and stuff like that.
Right. Okay, cool.
I think it was an internet only device. But Anytone does make that mobile station that you can mount in your shack and use it if you want. I was looking at it pretty seriously, but I decided just to stay with the HT and the hotspot at the house.
Yeah. And so the other thing that we'll get into in a future video is hotspots. But once you have your radio in hand and you have another local ham friend in the area within the typical VHF, UHF distance requirements, you'd be able to make a contact over DMR with that person with no other hardware whatsoever. Just your amateur radio license, your DMR, HT, and line of sight.
Yeah, which is super handy, and it's a great way to stay in touch with folks. And it's easy, it's reliable, so it's really dependable. I love it.
It works a lot like the old Nextel phones did, where you just sort of pick up the person's contact and hit the push to talk button on the side, and there they are.
Yeah, I remember when I was first started playing around with it, I was, scared to do a private call because I thought everybody was going to hear it all over the place. And boy, what are you doing jamming up my talk group? And I didn't want any of that. But no, it works great. The other thing, we talked about it. You can use your own DMR ID as your own personal talk group.
Yep.
And then everybody adds that into their radio as a talk group ID. Do a group call to it, and then a group of people can talk that way.
Yeah, so you can do it private, or you can do group, or you can do over the internet.
Yeah, and it works out really well. But that goes back to another reason that you want to look at radios when you're buying one, like the Anytones or the BTEC. I can add talk groups on the fly to this radio. Um, some of them you can't. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to get into DMR, and I'll be fine buying the $75 TYT." And I'm not hating on TYT or any of that stuff, but when you buy those, you can't program them on the fly. They're field programmable, is what they say, and it really makes for a frustrating experience. I'm not saying you need to buy a Motorola or the most feature-rich HT when you're getting into DMR, but you really should be looking around the $200 price point, and then I would really, really say take a look at the Anytones. The user experience for equipment like that is just so much better than some of the cheaper compromises. Now, I get that there's radios like the Radio Oddity GD77. You can install Open 77 on there. And it
Mhm.
gives you a lot more flexibility. And then you can use Talk or Alias instead of the Contact ID database. But for a new person getting into DMR, that's asking them to do a lot and have a pretty good understanding of the mechanics of DMR.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that I did with this radio. I mean, the way that we've got it configured, I don't know if this is out of the box or not, but you just hold the 0 key down and it pops up group ID question mark,
Yeah.
and you type in your group ID and you talk to it. And there you go. And there's a similar shortcut for doing like a direct person. So if I walked up to you at a ham fest and you happen to have your DMR radio on and we became fast friends and all that jazz, I could push another button, type in your personal DMR ID, and then just start talking right away.
Well, yeah, and see, that's what's really handy is like when you go to if the human malware virus ever goes away, you go to like a large ham fest or something like that. Just everybody take your DMR radio and then use somebody's ID as a group call.
Yeah.
And you can stay in touch that way. It really is a fantastic protocol. There's nothing wrong with using the analog HTs in those situations, but like, you go to Hamfest and they're like, "Oh, everybody's on this frequency," so that means everybody's on that
Everybody.
frequency.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit of a hassle too.
Yeah, for sure. What else can we talk about with these guys? We both landed on the BTEC 6X2,
Yeah.
and one of the benefits of me having the same radio that Ape does is that I just ask him a question and he's got an answer for me, and he can ask a question and I might have an answer for him because I might have gotten into a different feature or a different slant into the hobby than he did.
Yeah, and if I don't know an answer, I'm happy to make one up. Uh,
That's always helpful.
right, right. But yeah, I mean, it's a durable radio. And I'm not saying you shouldn't look at or buy other ones. Like here's the iLoons HD1, which is a nice durable radio. There have been some issues with it. This one goes up to 10 watts, or it's supposed to at least go up to 10 watts, and it's got some waterproofing capability that the BTEC doesn't. But what I like about these two radios in particular, they're extremely easy to program, even on analog. Like it's easier to set up a repeater in this thing than it is on my Yaesu FT60 or my Yaesu FT70D, for example. Like when I go out of town, I'll take this radio. We go to Disney every year for our family vacation. And I just throw this in a bag. I don't bring a computer to program it or anything. I get down there, I'll fire up Repeater Book app on my phone, find some local repeaters, whether they're DMR or analog, just program them in, takes a couple seconds, and I'm good to go. Some of the other DMR radios, it's not possible. You need to have a computer to program them,
Yep.
or it's just a complex thing. I get that if you use a Baofeng every day, you can program a repeater.
You
I've
get
done
good
it,
at it.
but if you don't use it that often, and that's the radio you take, you're going to be down there. You're going to be Googling.
Now, I think with the regular Baofeng analog radios, you can program the repeater in, but you can't give it a name from the
Yeah,
keypad.
right.
And with these guys, you can program in everything, including whatever name you want to program in.
Yeah, you can also text message from this. So I could shoot you a text message. You could reply to the text message. It's really handy, and I think it's the way that all this amateur radio stuff's going to go. I think that you're going to see more and more proliferation of digital protocols and less analog
Right.
over the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the direction that the hobby has no choice but to go into is digital communications and the ability to send text messages and pictures and stuff back and forth. And it's not because the phones have done it, it's just because that is the next logical step. I mean, you can only consider ham radio the leading edge of technology when it is the leading edge of technology. And if all you can do is talk analog, which is what we could do since, the dawn of radio,
Right.
that's not really technologically advanced, is it? You got to bring new features out. You got to do new things. So you can also do data communications if you have the right cable with this thing, and it's got APRS built in. It's not full-fledged APRS though. There's a couple limitations.
Yeah, it's more of an APRS location beacon. Like, while I said it has SMS on it, you can't do SMS over APRS, and I can't get receipts back on APRS. So if I send you an APRS message, I'm never gonna hear anything back. So I would expect to see, next generation. I get the DMR radios have been around for a while, but I really would consider this still like a Gen 1.
Yeah.
Same thing with the iLoons HD1. When you get the next generation, I would expect you would see more people taking advantage of the ability to send data payloads like pictures, more robust APRS tracking and stuff like that. That's going to raise the price of these things up.
Yeah.
You start to talk about a $400 or $500 radio. But I think that some of these are just really people's gateway drug into the digital space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can start out with RD5R, the UV5R of DMR radios, and it does the thing. It's a radio, but it's exactly what you'd expect for the price tag feature point. Now, the cool thing is that all your UV5R accessories interoperate. So you can pull a UV5R battery off and stick it onto the RD5R, and it actually looks exactly the same when you have them sitting side by side. It's just when you turn it on, the screen is a little bit more involved on the RD5R. And the BTEC 6X2 is quote unquote missing some features also, like the Anytones have Bluetooth.
Right, no Bluetooth.
Yeah.
You know what? When you were saying that you made a really good point that I wanted to bounce off of. Like, a lot of times when you take a look in the analog space and you look at a UV5R and then you look at like an FT60. So like when I was buying like my first HTs, like I bought a UV5R and I used it and I didn't know any better. I was like, this is pretty nice. This works really well. And everybody's like, oh, you should take a look at the Yaesus. And, so I bought one. And when I looked at the Yaesu, it was a better radio. I could feel it was a better radio.
Mm-hmm.
I could hear that it was a better radio. But I was like, this was $25 and this was 150. It might even have been more than that. And I was like, I don't know if it's really 6 or 7 times worth it.
Right. As a brand new ham, you don't know that it's worth that kind of money because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, but what I can tell you unequivocally is that you can look at like some of these, like a GD77, and I'm not picking on that one. It's just the first one that comes to mind. Yeah, it's around $100. Maybe you get it on sale for $79, $89, something like that. And then you look at this, which is $179. This is much nicer than twice the cost.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare those radios, like the frustration-free ease of use that this radio has makes it the. I guess what I'm saying is that you can notice a significant difference in the radios that you might not notice in analog HTs.
Yeah, I mean, just the look and feel of this compared to the iLoons that you had sitting right there on your desk.
Yeah.
You can see the difference in just visual appeal. Like they took some time to make it a good looking radio as opposed to let's take our old radio and just put a DMR chip inside of it.
Yeah, like the Baofeng, what is it, the 1801, which again is a really popular DMR radio that is hackable with that Open 77 firmware. Now I have not done that. I have not used the Open 77, so I don't want to hate on it too much. Now, folks that I know who have done it have been like, this is an incredible upgrade to this radio, but at the same time, it doesn't take it to where you are with an Anytone. And I'm not trying to fanboy on the Anytones. I think that Hytera also makes a really nice radio, but I think there's some subscription price that you need to pay for the programming software. And they tend to be more UHF, not dual band. So that's another thing that you want to take a look at when you're buying these radios is make sure you get one that works well in analog and is also dual band. It gives you more flexibility,
right?
When you do that.
Yeah. So if I was to go back as a brand new ham, and we recently had this conversation over Discord. If you want to join the Discord, there's a link to that in the description down below. But it was, I'm a brand new ham was the question that was posed. I have a $300 budget. What should I get? And for a brand new ham on a we don't know where you're going in the hobby, we don't know what direction you're going in, don't know what things you'd like to explore or anything along those lines. $300 is a pretty open price. For that price tag, you can get a 2-meter, 70 centimeter mobile station and a power supply. Mm-hmm. Or you can get the 6X2 and a hotspot. And The mobile radio station will put out more power and allow you to reach out farther in your local area. So let's say it's for numbers, it's not accurate, but let's say for numbers, the HT will get you, 10 miles out, and the mobile radio will get you 40 miles out. But the DMR radio with the hotspot will get you worldwide. And there might be something in that. You might find that on a DMR talk group, there's a ATV group or a drone pilot group or an RV hams group, and that's the direction you're headed in your personal life anyways. I like to go out and run ATVs over the dunes, and there's an ATV group on the DMR hotspot, so I get to talk to my buddies there whether I'm within range or not. So I think the DMR hotspot and this radio makes a lot more sense than, say, getting a Baofeng UV5R or a Yaesu FT60 or something along those lines for a brand new ham.
Yeah, well, I would I always say that if I woke up tomorrow with no radios, I'd go out and buy a BTEC 6X2. Just for that reason that you're saying. Like, there's those talk groups that are built around certain community aspects, like 4x4 camping. Like I like to listen to weather. I guess I'm a weather nerd. And like whenever there's a problem with, there's a tropical depression or a hurricane or a typhoon, whatever it is, like I can find a talk group and listen in, and hear on what's going there. And then they also have national weather nets, that hurricane net, and it just makes it easy and accessible. If I have a desktop mobile, dual bander, I'm not going to hear that.
Right.
I'm not going to get access to it. Now, I think that, from a nostalgia standpoint, when people talk about radios, they want to hold on to something like, that has a mic and you're talking it like that. And it's got some knobs on there to twist, and you kind of lose some of that with the HT space. But literally, I can just take my radio, a hotspot, and a USB charging battery and go anywhere, as long as I got internet connection, right?
Yeah, and then your cell phone will handle the internet connection too.
Yeah. So I can use it in the car. I can use it at my desk at work. Like that's what I would do. I would take my hotspot in and just have it fired up on my desk at work, take my radio in, connect to it, and do whatever.
So riffing off of that a little bit, we all know you live in Nebraska. That's not a secret anymore.
Right.
And so what he's talking about with weather is if there's a hurricane that's coming into Florida, you can tune into the Florida DMR talk group, Florida statewide, or you can actually tune straight into like a more local talk group into the area of Florida where that hurricane's landing, and you can get real news on the ground from a real human being, as opposed to what you get on the big network stations, and you can really hear what's going on. I was really surprised when that hurricane, I think it was Hurricane Maria, hit Puerto Rico, that the news was nonstop about all of the devastation. But there was also places of Puerto Rico that weren't even touched at all. And from I'm in the Midwest also. I'm in Wisconsin, as you guys know. I thought that it just wiped out the entire island, and everybody was just completely and totally destitute and without power, and they're all missing roofs on their houses and stuff. And I actually went on Zillow and looked to see what houses were for sale, trying to get a more boots on the ground type of perspective. And there were still houses for sale that had absolutely zero damage to them. So you get a totally different type of news from a local ham than you would from a network news station.
Yeah, so you can look at their local talk groups, or sometimes people spin up a talk group, for that, or dedicate like WeatherNet or something like that. And when that hurricane was going on, it's exactly that. There are people down there giving real-time reports. Sometimes they're reporting them into Skywarn or Stormwatch, and that just makes it cool. That's one of the things that I'm into. But again, like they have computer chats where people might talk about vintage computers or something like that.
What?
Or you might, right. Or trains. I think that there's a lot of people who are in the trains, and they have talk groups around that. So that really makes it cool. As opposed to getting on your local repeater and then getting chased off because maybe you didn't ID it correctly or something like that.
Oh, the coolest thing to do on our local repeater is to chase people off just for using it in the first place.
Right. So this could be an emergency.
It could be.
Yeah,
wait your turn.
Right, like that's well. What I always say is people who get mad that people using the airwaves because somebody might need to use it for an emergency is crazy to me.
Don't ever make a phone call. You might need to call 911.
Right. I'm just like, come on, man, are you for real?
Yeah.
But people do that.
Out of my way, I'm a ham.
Yeah, so like I said, I've owned a bunch of different DMR radios. Some of them were sent to me for review. I bought some, traded some, and landed. again, I don't want to, this is the one I like. One was the cost and then one with the extra battery. I don't have a need for Bluetooth. And if you look at the Mickler comparison, this actually has some other features that the Anytones don't. But again, even the Bluetooth really works well, but it's also ham radio Bluetooth. You know what I mean? Which means it's probably an older protocol or a different
Bluetooth
flavor.
0.2.
Yeah, because I've known people who've had Bluetooth radios that they can't get to connect to their vehicle. Some people can do it just fine. Other people like, yeah, it won't connect to Chrysler Bluetooth for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I'm just pulling Chrysler out of the air. I'm just like, Ape's a liar. It works fine on Chrysler. But so to me, the Bluetooth wasn't really something that I was too interested in. This is a loud radio. I can hear it just fine in the car. And then I also have the hand mic. So I actually leave this in a cup holder and just hook the hand mic up to my seat belt, right? And then I can hear the radio over that. And just
acting like he's a lawman.
Well, yeah, you got to look the part. When you carry a ham radio, you have a responsibility to the community.
Well, it's really funny you say that because everybody's seen that yellow fang that I have. Mm-hmm. And there was a car accident about a mile from my house. Well, not a mile. It was within walking distance. I just exaggerate because everything's so spread out up here. It was on field day, and we were expecting people to come up. So I'm walking down with my HT, my yellow fang in my hand, and people were actually moving out of my way like I was some kind of official dude wearing my ARRL field day shirt and carrying my yellow radio. I'm like, no, I'm just making sure it's not any of my friends that are hurt. And if there's anything I can do to help, I've got a radio and I've got people up the hill and I've got a cell phone and I know how to dial 911, but they were like legitimately moving out of my way. And I'm like, it's yellow. Like it's a bright yellow radio. This is not official at all.
There is official capacity. He's got it. But see, I use the red fang for that. So
that'll do it too. And see your fire.
Yeah, I've actually got a blue one that I really like. And when I go to, sometimes I guess I'm just being a jerk or something like that. But when I go to a ham fest, I take the blue Balfang and I put it right on, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. Yep. So, like one of the things I don't like in the ham community is when folks are judgmental of other people, especially people who are new to the hobby. And you go to the ham fest and everybody's got their, Yaesu on their belt. They're sticking it out or their ICOM. They want to make sure that everybody knows that they have a Yaesu or an ICOM radio.
And flex it.
Yeah, I own Yaesu and ICOM radios too, so I'm not trying to hate on people that do, but.
If you guys weren't paying attention, that was an ICOM mic he picked up off the desk. And it was also a D-Star radio it was attached to.
But I wear the fang just to create controversy. You know what I mean? Like, because people are like, oh, he's got a bow fang. Like, that boy don't know what he's talking about, what he's doing. And I might not, but, I wear it in protest.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and Balfangs get a bad rap, but I mean, if you're talking about prepping out like a vehicle bag for roadside emergency situations, a fully charged Balfang is $30 to drop in the bag and stick with your road flares and your triangles and your jumper cables and forget about it. Carry your big boy Yaesu with you when you go, and if it happens to run out of a battery and you still need to finish out that QSO and get it in the log. Then you've got your Balfang for backup.
A few years back, we took a family vacation. We were visiting some family over in New York, and we went down to the beach in the lower part of the state. And I just went out, to my bag, and I got out my Balfang. It was my UV5R, and I was just sitting there on the beach, and I was able to fire it up. I was able to connect to a local repeater. And started, just saying, "Hey, shepherd the lost sheep. This is a smoking ape." And somebody came back, and they were from the Midwest, and I was like, "What the heck? How did that happen?" Well, it was, I guess, an All-Star. Yeah. It was an All-Star repeater that was connected on, and so I just, was able to sit on the beach and just make contacts for a while, just talking to people that I would never had to. But I guess the point of why I was talking about that, I was talking about throwing the Balfang in the bag. I didn't care if sand got in that thing. I didn't care if it ended up in the ocean. I didn't care if somebody walked off with it. None of that mattered. I would have been a lot more paying more attention to what was going on with that radio had I taken out the Yaesu or the Anytone or the B-Tech or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because I've been worried about it. So they definitely have a place, and they're definitely handy for stuff like that.
Besides, I mean, what would all these gatekeepers do if you didn't have it?
Right. They wouldn't have anything to hate on. Well, what I like is when you get on the repeater and you're talking, Yeah, how's my signal? Can I get a signal report? And people are like, oh, you sound fine, son. You sound fine. What kind of radio are you using? Then be like, oh, it's a Baofeng.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can't hear you. I'm hearing fried eggs. What's going on over there?
Yep. I know a lot of people that don't know there's a problem until you tell them there's one.
Right, right, which is great.
Yeah, so I mean, you've heard the radios that we like. We've talked about a couple of other ones, and realistically, get a radio, get on the air, and learn what you don't know. There's a whole lot of unknown unknowns, and like I would not mind having a nice HT that had a good built-in DMR and APRS function. And I don't even know what I would use APRS for, but I want to explore it. I want to play with it. I want to learn, and maybe what I'll learn is that I don't need it after all, or maybe I'll learn that I can't live without my send out my weather local report and get back instant weather. I mean,
yeah, APRS is really cool, and I've played around with it. But at the end of the day, when I was done with it, I was like, I don't really have a practical use case for this.
right.
And people are like, well, if you're in the woods and you get into trouble, I've got a Garmin InReach that I can use Iridium network, and I can send emails and text messages and all that other stuff. I pay a lot of money for that, but that's what I'm going to use if I'm out and I really need to get into contact with somebody.
I got a friend that's got a TNC set up at home with a nice screen set up, and he sends his wife messages while he's out doing whatever he's doing, and she can just walk by and read it. And she can't reply; she's not licensed. But
yeah, I've heard of people doing that, and also sending email. Like I think with APRS, you can actually send an email, so they can just monitor an email account.
Yeah.
My wife's not going to be good at that because she's going to want to tell me I did something wrong, even if I'm far away. So we go camping. I go camping a couple times a year with some of my buddies. We've always got at night before everybody goes to bed, we always climb up to the highest spot and get on there, and everybody's got to call their wives. Whose phone's got the most bars on it? That's the one we're going to use.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to call and check in.
Yeah, I don't miss those days. I've been married long enough now. I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, well, like I said, my wife always, you're not having too much fun, are you? You're being safe. All that.
What is the definition of too much fun?
Well, I guess thinking too much beer drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't sound like too much fun to me. That sounds like not enough.
Yeah. So what other DMR radios were you looking at though when you're thinking about buying?
So obviously I was looking at that RD5R because I love my Baofangs. One of the guys in the club has a TYT. Another guy has an Anytone. The fourth guy has a DMR radio. I just haven't seen it yet. I don't know which one he's got, so gotta figure out what's going on there. I looked at all the different videos on YouTube. You've got a fantastic playlist. I'll link that down below as well.
Nice.
And it really was. It just came down to the 6x2. The only other radio choice that I would have come up with would have been something with a little bit more APRS stuff in it. And the leader in APRS right now seems to be Kenwood, but I don't know if Kenwood makes a DMR radio. Do they?
They make commercial DMR radios, but all of their amateur stuff is D-Star.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's actually really hard to go to, like Yaesu's website or ICOM's website or Kenwood's website and build out a shopping cart as an example, or get a feature comparison between different models of radios or whatever. Like you go to Amazon and you want dog food, and then you can narrow it down by Alpo, and then you can narrow it down a step farther by beef or lamb or chicken, and then you can narrow it down a step farther by organic or non-organic, and whether it's in a can or a pouch, and you can just filter until you get the thing. Right. And there's just isn't, ham radio websites just aren't there yet.
Well, yeah, and then you also have when you go to Amazon and stuff like that, you have the people who bought this.
Yep.
Or recommended purchases and stuff like that. That's one of the things that makes ham radio so difficult, is that whatever you buy, you've made a mistake.
Right? Yes, and someone will tell you right away.
Right. And then the other one is that there's so many, like I always say that if you get lost in the woods, just ask an antenna question, 3 hams will find you and give you 4 different answers. So that's the thing, is that you don't know what is good information. The signal to noise ratio is really high. Like you don't know what's good information, what's bad information. And it makes buying equipment and getting into the hobby extremely difficult. There's plenty of people who will be like, that ain't a real radio. That ain't ham. Don't buy a DMR radio, which I think is just terrible advice. But you know, when you go to get one of these and you want to go get a hotspot, you're going to get everything from, if you don't buy the OpenSpot 3 from Shark RF, you're wasting your money and you're buying junk.
Yep.
To oh, you can get the parts on Alibaba, just solder them together and you're good to go, bro. The spectrum of the information that you're going to get, it really makes it confusing for folks to know what to do, the right thing to do.
And the funny thing is, even though you can get the raw part on Alibaba for the hotspot, I mean, I mentioned this in a future video in this series. You can't get working parts half the time. I mean, we bought 4 of them, and out of 4, only 1 of them worked. And one of the videos I've got coming out as a side project is watch me take this knife and cut this circuit trace and make this thing work because of the bad soldering job that they did at the factory. And you have no way of knowing about it. And, you know, who wants to go through the hassle of buying it, finding out it doesn't work, returning it, waiting for the money to show up, you know, verifying that happened.
It's the worst. I bought an MMDVM board, and I had to send it back, the first one that I bought, because it had problems. And I'm just like, this is, it sucks. So that's the other thing is like, I'll tell people when they're getting into DMR, you know, be prepared to spend way more money than you thought you would. When I was getting in DMR, I said, hey, I want to make sure I get a good radio. So my budget's $200. And the VTech fell within that. And I thought I was gold.
Yep.
You know, so I got it, I program it up. There's a couple of DMR repeaters around here. I couldn't hit a single one, none. You know, so I go and figure out what I need. And I was like, oh, now I need to buy a hotspot. That's another $100.
Yep.
And it just started compounding.
Yeah, so you know, the radio that the 2 of us have, and like Abe said, if he woke up tomorrow without a radio in his hand, you'd get a 6x2. I really enjoyed the 6x2. I think it was a pretty good purchase, and I think I'll keep it for as long as I possibly can. And I would definitely make a recommendation of that radio. And then when the next one comes out that's got the built-in APRS functionality, and if I haven't already solved that with a Commodore 64, I'm going to get it.
Or the BTEC 6X3.
Yes. or the 7x2. I mean, it depends on which side they're upgrading.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Maybe it'll be a 7x3. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. I hope you guys have found some value out of it. And from all of us here at the Amateur Radio News Desk, News Watch Hour, Action News live on the spot, first on the scene. Us, too. There you're over there.
Yep. Signing off.
Signing off. Thanks for being awesome.
Take care.